All right, why don't we get started? And that way we will have folks come in and we can sort of try to not have to race through the presentation. So I'm Wendy Fields and I run the Democracy Initiative. And my co-presenter today is...
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jahedi Mora. I'm the National Deputy Political Director of Community Change. Community Change helps grassroots organizations across the country build their civic engagement. And I personally have a labor and immigrant rights background previously with Gas in Action, running on the field programs in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia.
Great. Thanks, Jahedi. So I'm excited to be here with you all this afternoon. Please know that you can put your questions in the chat and hopefully we'll have time to get to it. So again, I'm Wendy Fields and I run the DI, Democracy Initiative, and we are a coalition of labor and civil rights groups from labor, civil rights, and the Enviro movement and democracy movement. Nationally based in DC. We represent over 45 million members who come to this work to understand that to build a bottom-up movement around democracy reform, but they know we can't win our climate change policies, our police reform, immigration, if we do not tear down the barriers that block our democracy for winning both at the state and local level. We believe that winning in the states and localities make the case for national reform. So we can move forward, Brittany. We mostly, next slide. We work on our platform. We believe that, we hope you're thinking about this as democracy is 365 days a year. Even though we work, this is an election cycle, a very critical election cycle. Our goals are really to increase participation. It would be amazing if we topped out historically this year and had 75% voter participation. That would be amazing. We work on money and politics and we see that the power of the influence of money and politics right in our face today, as 55 million people unemployed, millions more underemployed, while trillions are being given to corporations and wealthy interests, and everybody's trotted off out of DC. And thirdly, expanding voting rights is a big center of our platform, and redistricting. Today, however, we are here to talk about the fight we're in. Next slide. The ground rules for this training. So we just have a few ground rules and I'll hand off to Jahedi for a couple. Please be fully present, step up, allow others to ask questions. We will try to chat. Brittany will try to respond to some folks in there. Mute yourselves, share questions. Jahedi?
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to put everything else any questions that you have in the chat box. I think we're trying to make this very interactive. Try to let us know how you want to participate, and please keep yourselves muted. I will be muted myself when I'm not speaking, but we hope to make this an interactive session for you all.
So I am going to ask you to do one thing. As communicators here at Netroots, we want to be thinking about how we're talking, doing digital, putting ourselves in our different audiences so we understand how the information is coming to folks. The second thing, that we are building a movement. So you're getting this through a race class lens. When we think about this, we're building relationships. We want to make sure that whatever we do today, we're building information for the future and keeping lasting relationships. So our objectives for this, for today on the inoculation is communicate ways to build trust in the voting system, again, through a race class lens, shared understanding of the key terms and tactics, best practices to identify false information. We're lucky to have Jahedi to sort of really play that out at the local and state level, And understand that inoculation always comes with an action step, like how to resolve it. And it's really as a counter suppression strategy. And really, ultimately, we want people we want to inspire individuals to act.
Yeah, and when it comes to
Sorry, Jade.
when it comes to the inoculation, we use this with audiences to combat disinformation before they encounter the false information. The objective is to proactively inoculate against the anticipated problematic content before it spreads. And I think, to when this point about inspire individuals to act, I mean, I'll tell you, right? Like in the immigrant community and communities of color, we are oppressed every day. We know how awful the situation is. Our people are dying, right, every day, and we're seeking our liberation. So let's use positive messaging. Stay positive. I think we'll touch base on this, but encourage voting. When I'm talking about messaging, encourage voting, whatever that means, right? Whether it's mail or in person, right? It is safe. And emphasize how easy, safe, and secure is. Education, explain the process. We'll touch base a little bit on it when it comes to language. And use the name that is relevant to the state and location that you're in, whether that's absentee, vote by mail, vote at home. And obviously don't repeat, let's not amplify, but to bring it home, let's just stay positive and encourage voting in general.
Cool. Thanks, Jahedi. Next slide. So let's just do a little technical, you'll hear a lot about misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So I just want to take a second. I want you to read the slide, and I want to take a second to just say there's a difference. Misinformation, the bottom line is it's unintentional. So sometimes, and especially in this environment, where at the local and state level, because of this historic moment on voting, the rules are changing to accommodate voters, particularly in blue states or states where this is new. So I'll give you an example. In Connecticut last week during the primary, their election was on Tuesday. And then the governor, because of the volume, he extended the time period for when they would accept ballots. And they're changing the rules somewhat for the positive because we're being activists or on the ground doing that. So we want to be careful that we're not just always smacking down something because it might be our families spreading false information that people think is true. So we just want to, that's just a different way of thinking about that so that when we do the pushback that we know who we're talking to. Disinformation is completely what we're going to focus mostly on, which is manipulating and intentionally creating conspiracy theories. You see Trump and his enablers, I'm not going to say his name anymore as we go forward today, fraud, ballots coming from everywhere. So we just want to make sure that we're going to talk today mostly about disinformation. And then malinformation is when you're using someone else's name, or the key one this week was who was Herman Cain, right? Somebody was deliberately using that Twitter to send a message from someone who has now passed away. And it's also to malign. Today, we're going to talk about disinformation. And the way to counter that is to have inoculation and develop trusted sources. So inoculation. Prevention, you all probably know this, but let's just state it together. Prevention is better than a cure. And so if people know and we can predict what's going to happen for folks, they will trust you. Then you get to be validated. So we're sharing information as inoculation, but we're also always, as Jahedi says, we're inoculating and then we're agitating to remind people why to stay focused, why to vote, and then inspiring them to act. So steps of inoculation are identify and share trusted information and sources with your network. But also remember, again, in Black and brown communities or any communities, young folks, we want to also be talking about shared values. So reminding people what's important all the time, you know, so he may be saying terrible things, but we still have to act. And remember, this is about immigration. This is about police reform. This is about climate change. Quickly report false information on social media when you see it. Quickly share that, share what's false so people don't repeat it. And finally, really critical, I hope you all are doing this now, create a rapid response plan for your organization. That is critical because it won't really matter, all of this, if you don't have a rapid response plan.
That's right. And I think I just quickly want to share something, you know, that also prompted me, you know, from the work on the ground to think about this, because in the Wisconsin primaries, just recently, I was working with one of the on the ground groups, the Latino groups, and they do a lot of relational organizing. And by mistake, one of their leaders, who's one of their top leaders doing engaging their friends and family in relation organizing, had been texting this form. So before, one of the tools, and now called Empower, was called My RVP. This Google form said at the top, My RVP, no logo, no organization. It was asking these questions: did you vote? Did you fill out the census? And all of the point is that it was extremely sketchy. And it was at a moment in which there was very little time to sort of act, get to the source, figure out what to do, how much damage it happened. So that would have been just a great time, and I think a good example to have like a rapid response plan sort of ready, because these things are inevitably going to happen.
So, and I will also say, well, I want to, before we, says we get deeper into the presentation, next slide, Brittany, please. As we get deeper into the presentation, we are winning. This is an intense historic moment. It has been so inspiring to see, despite the public health crisis in front of us, that folks are standing in line to vote. They are volunteering. They are engaging in record numbers, the intergeneration of the movement. And so what you will be seeing a lot in this moment is how aggressive and how quickly they're going to be pushing out messages, and the lies will grow. And so again, staying focused in your narrative will be key and tantamount. So trusted sources. This is really important because we always want to make sure that we want to encourage the audience to come back to us, or your constituency to come back to us. Can be consistent, drive people to trusted websites and sources where they're not going to be in a debate. We don't want to send people into a war. I saw a group the other day try to send folks to Twitter. No, 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 no. You send them to where they're going to get consistently updated, provide accurate and reliable information. Don't regurgitate the opposition. Again, we'll go through what it's important to inoculate is to predict and tell people what to look for and let them know what's happening. That prediction will help you be a trusted person, know your audiences, who they trust, who they speak to. Again, shared values conversations. We always talk to people. The first thing I always say to folks, hey, we're working on voting, but why do you want to participate? Why do you want to vote? Why don't you want? If somebody says, well, I don't want, well then what do you expect to happen in your life if we don't make change? So, and if people don't trust vote by mail, what don't you trust about it? But don't do laundry lists, because what we don't want to do is amplify the oppositional message. And then be knowledgeable on the problem and the solution. And if you're not, then we say we come back and get those answers to the problem. Jahedi?
Yeah, and I think obviously alongside with, right, like where do you redirect? I mean, to become a trusted source for valuable and accurate information, you have to intentionally develop relationships, put on your organizer hat. Like shared values, it is about shared values. And that's something that Wendy has been saying a lot, because it is not just about electoral politics, particularly for voters from disenfranchised communities who have not experienced positive change in a while, right? Just promises. We just don't vote to vote, right? Like we vote for our lives, and it is to make sure that we count and we stay on top of the democracy field all year round. Now, I'll tell you that as a self-professed movement girl, like I believe in the services organizing model of many grassroots organizations like CASA, the organization that I was with, because they are a trusted source. They're the source. There's the source where families go to get legal help, get housing, information about after school programs. They are trusted messengers in the community. So we have to be strategic when we're thinking about building trust through good organizing. We have to, like really understand that good organizing goes a long way. Build local trust in the community so that your program becomes a trusted source of information. Spend time building relationships. Also, I mean, I think now is a great also time, if you haven't done so, to get connected to those entities, right? And infrastructure on the ground, if that's something that your program, it's not structured in that way. Because at the end of the day, we all have to ground ourselves that reports on voter suppression and all of these things are going to come from the people who we are in conversation, who are in conversation with us, right? I think I'll say one thing, that's also one of the reasons why I really prescribe and love relational organizing. And I do believe that now in these times, good organizing can happen, obviously offline, but also online as well, all forced to do in these times.
So I see a question from Janice, and I'll just say, since we transition to the next phase, a point on the next phase specifically about vote by mail, and we will talk a little bit about that. About making a plan. When in doubt, folks, again, can go to the clerk's office and the clerk's website locally, because some of those folks people know in their locally in their neighborhood. This is not sort of like the moment for billboards. So there are literally this key slide about what you're writing, who you're writing them to, what to join, be strategic. That is really, really important. For the labor folks, when we say relational organizing, that's the new term for the one-on-one organizing that many of us who are much older were doing for 20 years ago. So that's what's really the need to engage, and we're encouraging folks to hold host parties, family events, so that folks are actually connecting and can ask questions. So next slide. We're supposed to show a video here? Great. So we're just gonna show a video here.
Yeah, and let me preface this really quickly by saying that obviously, to win this point, the way that we used to build trust and train those trusted validators in the community has changed in the times of COVID, right? Like before, we had canvassers who canvassed their neighbors, they recognized them, that has changed. Now we interact in the digital space. So, and good organizing, again, can be done online and offline. At Community Change, we have been working with our partners to use Soapbox, this tool that will show you, that way we have been collecting stories from the field, from members and activists. Leaders are invited to use their own voices, share their reactions to what's happening in their life, sharing it in their social media, and that catapults them as trusted messengers. So we take those videos and boost them in digital paid ads and invite other people to join their network. So let's go ahead and watch one of the videos.
Hi, my name is Coretta Brown. I'm a social justice advocate here in Harris County. Wow, that's a good question. It's a funny thing right now about the Black vote experience. It's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of mistrust. It's a lot of fear. And unless we can get to the point of being completely and utterly honest and transparent about what can be done and what cannot be done, and we are willing to fight and come to the table together, there might be a slight issue with the voting experience, and that scares me. That scares me a lot, because we are in such a monumental time right now, and we need people to go to the polls and vote. And we also need the people that want us to go to the polls and vote to give us.
Nope.
Not sure what happened there, but
Okay,
I think
well,
we got the point.
there's
I think we
another,
got the
there's
point
another
there.
video.
Yep.
Do we have time or no?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi y'all, my name is Anna Flores. I live in New York, and I am a Latina and an immigrant to this country. And this November, I am voting for someone who I believe represents my community and their needs. As an immigrant, I did not come to this country with the power to vote, but now I do possess that power. So I intend to use my ability to exercise the right to be able to choose representatives and electives that represent the interests of my community. And I am very excited to be able to do that this November. So I invite everyone to think about and reflect, and to make sure that you go out and vote this November.
Two great videos that make two important points that we've all talked about: shared values, that trust and that nervousness, that fear, and the ability for us to make sure that the need for us to aspire, have folks be aspirational, have aspirational messages. Next slide, please. So what do we mean? So I just want to spend a little time modeling. So trust does not mean that I won't vote. Or vote by mail does not work, or going early. That's not what that means. It means I will do it, but as the first young woman said, you know, I need transparency. I need to see, I need to understand. So people check their voter registration. That's what that means. I need to know that it's up to date. I need to have that concrete sign off. I filled out my absentee ballot application, and I dropped it off early enough. And then I get my ballot in time and I fill it out. And then what's the mechanism for me to track my ballot? I go early to vote, and maybe I do use I want to vote in person. So I'm going to go early if there's an early vote, and I'm going to drop it off at the clerk. It is that transparency. It is the ability to know specifically, and then I've gotten my information from a clerk or from somebody who I trust, like a CASA, or for and folks we're at the Democracy Initiative. We will have all this stuff on the website, but it's mostly for folks to think about this locally.
That's right. And you know, I just want to obviously like model this trust statements, right? Like, I trust that my voter registration is up to date. I trust that I filled out my absentee ballot applications correctly, and by the deadline. I will get my ballot in time. I trust that my ballot will be received in time, and I trust that I can track my ballot and call my elected official. All of those things, right, like, can be true. And you know, now orchestrated mass voter suppression used on Black and Brown communities. You know, like, for those things, I think that we just try to know the rules and make a plan, and that is really the inoculation.
So let's move to that really quickly. So what does it look like in the field? You all see it on TV, you hear it. What I say every day to everyone is that welcome to the Black and Brown experience and underserved experience, Indigenous community experience, because now they've taken those tactics and now it is on steroids. It is mass voter suppression to everybody in this country, so that they can win. And they have the power to mess around with the system. And what we say is, don't mess with our votes. But here's what we have to tell people, what to think about. Understand the voter ID laws. Voter registration restriction. Make sure you've checked your registration and it's updated. That one of the things they do is if you move, you want to make sure your address is updated, because voter purging is like the #1 suppression tactic that we see across the country. Closing polling sites. We saw a huge problem in Detroit and in DC, where polling sites were closed at the last minute and not announced. And they got public health crisis, right? Lack of information due to those changes. You see the big sabotage of the post office, and many of us are working to fight back and push back on the post office fights. Lack of poll workers. Another number 2 way of really making sure we have trusted sources is to volunteer to be an election worker or poll monitor. In a normal election, it takes 900,000 volunteers across this country. It will take many, many more. We have trainings, unsafe trainings, but when people see folks in their communities supporting that effort, in the clerk's office and volunteering, that sets up a trusted system locally. So you can add in the chat other things that you see. But again, this is a moment, and Jahedi said it. How do we counter this? Have a plan. Make the rules. Can we go to that? Know the rules and make a plan. Go to that slide, please. Next slide. So you make a plan. It's really important. First, know the rules. State election offices. Make sure folks know their phone number and the website. What's the deadline for registration? People can do this. Can you go back, please? Make a plan. Check your registration status. I keep repeating it because people don't do it. Apply for your ballot. Let me take a minute to do number 3. The opposition are going to mess around with the system enough, but it is our responsibility to close the knowledge gap. This is not a black and brown or class issue. We know highly intellectual folks don't know the details of how to fill out a ballot. We know college graduates don't know. We know PhDs. We've heard all kinds of stories. It is really important to fill this ballot application out. So we want activists to sign up. Brittany's going to put a link in the chat where you can sign up and we'll follow up. You will, to help people, fill it out properly. Make sure you use both envelopes, seal it up, sign it properly. Otherwise, you'll see mass rejections. And then the third thing I already talked about, which is volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. And, make this fun. We are going to win if everybody does their part. What's also critical, and we'll talk about this next, is making sure every single vote is counted. And we all collectively have to be a part of that demand. Next. The second piece of inoculation, which is really critical, is the period between Election Day and January 20th. He has already said he may not accept the results of the election. We are working in coalition with hundreds of groups across the country about what happens if they delegitimize the election. So first, what they might do is refuse to accept election results. The second thing they will do is mass litigation. They will try to undermine the electors in the system. And we want to make sure that we will be together to figure out how to push back on that. Continue to spread the fraud message. And of course, we worry about them cheating. The thing that one of the other things that we're most concerned that was within some of our control is it's going to be historic counting delays. We're not going to know when the election is. And we need to communicate to folks, be patient. We may not have all the results at night. It will take a couple of weeks or a week or 10 days. We have to be prepared for that. So educating people to be patient. We're educating the press to not be looking to call it quickly. We want to make sure that every single person's vote is counted, not just in the key states. This is about governing and about our issues. And we want to make sure that we have a network and a plan to push back rapid response system on social media platforms. And we're going to be organizing and mobilizing, because we're going to stay in that street if we have to till inauguration. Next. Jahedi, did I skip you on something? I'm sorry.
No, no worries. I think that on that note, obviously these are all scenarios that we have seen that we should anticipate. And I'll tell you from the field, in Pennsylvania Pennsylvania's primary this past June 2nd, we noticed that in the Latino community, we did programming South Central PA, and folks were skeptical. We heard folks sort of like even telling us the Republican telling us the GOP talking points, telling us talking points about how vote by mail could be fraud. And this is exactly to when this point getting granular is what also helped us. Hey, like this is actually easy and safe, but you have options. Stay positive. This is great. You could actually vote by mail. You could drop it off. This is where you drop it off. This is at the time that you drop it off. This is the postmark. You actually might need a stamp. You actually educate and get the information and say that there are options. If you don't get to do those things, you still have election day. And I think that that is a way that on the field we handled those misinformation or probably skepticism more than that we saw on the field.
I see a point. I mean, again, making sure everyone's vote is counted is not about a delay. This is just how life is going to be. We can't be satisfied at 56% voter turnout, which is what it was in 2016. We want 75%, and it's not going to hurt us to wait days. This is about making sure we're fully inclusive, that we have the power to send the loudest message that change is on the horizon. So we got to make it happen. So I want to just make the point that in the most important pieces of the first part of this presentation are be open, be transparent, have a plan for rapid response, know your audience. Most of all, in voting, know the rules and make a plan, and make sure you're in your organization, you have those two packets. We have lots of material that will be simple for folks to be able to utilize. If you sign up, no problem, to be able to share it. The last thing we want to do, and then we want to open it up to folks, is to tips to address misinformation and amplification and sharing in general. So I think what's really important here from us is it's not always possible to quash everything. So we'll get to that. But what's really important for us is know what information you're accessing. Does it have a date on it? Simple little things like, does it have a date? Does it sort of say where it's coming from? What it was intended to do? So I'm going to pause there and let Jahedi kind of go through the points of what Homeland Security kind of recommends also. Jahedi?
I'm having a little bit of a problem with my internet connection. If you have access to it and you want to read it or Brittany, please feel free to jump in. I'm having.
So let me just pick it up a little bit. Recognize risk, question the source, as I said, and investigate the issue. If you're not familiar with something, what I always do is I look at it and I click through to the website of where it came from. I never pull anything down off of Twitter unless I know who I'm following, and our team does not. we almost accidentally grabbed a photo the other day. Think before you link. Linking is like so dangerous to people. That is really hard, and that is really our responsibility, not to just drop a link in just because it looks good to you. You really need to know, and I say in this election cycle, when in doubt, you go to the clerk's office because information is local. I also say to the national organizations, in the primary, we had a lot of issues and challenges where the national groups, I don't want to name them, were sort of saying something different than what was tracking on the ground. It is really important to focus in on local information and state information, because that is where the activists are making the changes and where things are getting updated the most.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm back. This is live. So yeah, and when it comes to the Homeland Security document, obviously recognize the risk, question the source, investigate the issue, think before you link, talk to your circle. All of those are things that that Wendy discussed, and I would just add, when it comes to talk to your circle, make sure that involves like a local perspective, right? And folks on the ground who, if there's an issue arises, they might already be on it. They might already be looked in. There are these relationships that are developed at the local level with local elected officials that people have at this stage been working on for months.
So I think the thing is, I urge you to co-brand when you can materials, so that you are not so that you are taking a good look at things yourself, and then that your label's on there. Trusted national organizations. I do want to pick up on a question Janice has again about debunking. You know, debunking means debating, right? And it's always important to know who you're talking to. Sometimes we carry negative information to people who weren't even aware of it. So it's really important to not just send people to any debunking site. If you're and I don't have a site at this moment off the top of my head that I could sort of lift off the top of my head for a site. If you're a staff person and you're searching for factual information, then I think it's important for you to look for how to combat something that is being a complaint or that we think is dangerous. Like, you know, all mail ballots there's fraud. There's very little fraud. Can you use it? Yes, we can. And we know that we've gotten historic turnouts in Michigan and Kentucky where votes were counted, and that finding out why there were rejected ballots. And again, having volunteers that people trust and know. So I think it's really, really, really important that we just don't go out and say, oh, that's not true, and send somebody to a debunking site, because then they're going to learn you're going to scare them on things that they weren't even aware of. So I think it's really important to know your audience and know who you're working with. So I want to wrap up here and open this up for folks to ask questions, and we can talk about I'd like to really get questions and scenarios like what ifs, and that we can help together, talk it through together. Don't lecture, as I said, ask questions, don't carry misinformation. Always when you debunk it, you tell people, but we're winning, and here's what's happening, and here's why it's important. If we want to do climate change, we have to trust it and get our ballots in early, and you know, so, and then work with them to identify trusted sites that they want to come back to you. You want them to come back to you. Encourage them to make a plan, ounce of prevention, predict what might happen, and then invite them to step up by volunteering. And again, adding creativity. I heard that you all were having parties on Zoom last night. Maybe you could have a Zoom party that talks about why it's important. Let's all fill out our ballot together. You can do a video. I just got my ballot. I'm gonna put it in the Dropbox. All these things help encourage folks. We will sort of try to share some positive experiences from the primaries. And if people want to go in person, go vote early, do it, you know, drop it off at the clerk's office if that's, but let's help people problem solve.
And I would add to that that's actually what we've been like encouraging on the field. Like I would, you know, to win this point on videos, use Soapbox. I think we're going to share with you all the link to the Soapbox website. Take a video. Why are you voting for a caring economy? What does that mean to you? And I'll tell you, you saw those two videos. Why does that work? Right? It works because authenticity can't be replaced. And these are authentic, relatable voices. You can have the perfect talking points, the paid actors, the perfect message that you think that would, right, like that you think would debunk. But you know, like it might not really connect or identify with it because people might not see themselves reflected. If you do, you know, like a paid ad and boosted, I don't know, on Facebook. So I think that using trusted messengers, and there's another thing. Again, organizing. That can be offline and online. You could do events, as Wendy said. That's a great way to build trust, a way to build relationships in a network. That is great to do, to listen and get a feel for what disinformation or misinformation is there, and have a network to help spread good messaging, right? Like those, that's why I do believe in relational organizing, because then you create a network, and that's a great way to actually spread this good messaging of, hey, these are the facts.
So we have some good minutes here we can work with here, and I want to help folks and answer as much questions as you want. And even I'm always up for even. I love when people try to help me have a conversation with someone. That's really important. So let's take this moment to be really pragmatic. And I can answer Eric's first question. Eric says in the chat that some of us are in small networks or individuals or organizations doing their own work and identifying disinformation, but are disconnected from the coalition, struggling to find paid work doing it. So this is a perfect question. We work with folks on this in the states and localities. So put your name in there. You can contact Brittany Baxter, who is on the chat on my team. We have Getachew Casa, who does our outreach. We have regular mobilizing sessions on Wednesdays, twice a month, which we're going to be going to every week, certainly. Ways to sort of get tools, a toolkit, not 50 million toolkits. I know it's overwhelming out there. So we want to welcome folks to be able to sort of not reinvent the wheel. I love that. We are so good at reinventing the wheel. We are the best at it. Nobody's got us on the run in this democracy space. So we are so, we want you to step with us. And I'm sure Center for Community Change, there's a lot of tables in the states and localities. So yes, we're happy to welcome you all into the fold. Other questions?
You know, I'll say that at Community Change, we host weekly virtual parties. Everyone that would love to join is welcome to. And we do several actions and text voters and talk to voters across the country. So I'll be happy to also leave the contact information if anyone wants to join us in one of our virtual parties.
I'd like to ask you a question, each of you a question that I want you to practice, and you've got to commit to doing a video when you get off of here and then tweeting it out. Why you're vote, tell us all why you're voting, what's the most important, and what makes you the most nervous. Oh, you're shy. How about who will sign up to be an election worker? Oh, I'm versed about making sure my vote is counted. Yep. So Kelsey, I hope you're going to make your plan. Sit down, make your plan, check your date. Check. I had to check mine. I had a hyphenated name. They had it all screwed up. Get your ballot early, and I always say commit to voting by October 24th. Get it in. Get it in. I've seen horrific things. I'm with you as an immigrant. I'm with you. Immigration's important.
I'll say that. Well, I voted by mail in my state. My sister, who recently, who this was the first time that she was voting, she went to the polls. We were on the polls with our masks on for 4 hours. I joined her, even though I voted by mail, because that was important to her, and that she felt, that she wanted to be there and really obviously have the same fears that we all have, Carmen. I can relate to you.
I love, Carmen said she writes postcards. I love that, right? Remind your friends, do your network list. They wouldn't be doing what they were doing if they weren't nervous. And we can't let them. We can't let them take our vote. We had a campaign 2 years ago on Pence Kobach. Don't mess with our vote. We may have to be escorts, right? We may have to go together. In Philadelphia, they may decide that the National Guard are going to be the counters. Then we may have to go out there with our masks and support in our communities. We have to be ready to mobilize. Yep.
I know it's 4:58. We might be.
That we can keep going. I'm afraid of more conservative Supreme Court. I'm afraid of Trump and his peeps stealing the election. I feel like I'm so personally inspired by the uprisings, and that in this moment we're making a difference. Just think about the victories that we've seen that have surprised people in New York, in Georgia. People are standing online. I just don't buy it. He may make it difficult, and he may make it long, and he may make it hard, and he may make us all crazy. But I think from the activists that I've seen in my lifetime, I've never seen people so fierce, so fierce that they will not mess with our vote. So you got to volunteer. I'm going to look for folks to sign up. You got to volunteer. We're going to make sure it's safe and do it together. We must do that. We must hold parties. We must support the clerks. And when we launch our campaign, and I'm sure that Netroots, you'll be on a list from Netroots. Netroots will be sharing with us that we are going to demand that every vote count, not let the media decide. So I'm going to wrap it up here and appreciate all of you. I am telling you, we're going to be dancing in the streets. We're going to be dancing loudly, and I have no doubt. So make a plan, know the rules, and make a plan. So that's it. Good job, guys. Sorry, I stepped over you a little bit.
Okay. I forgot I had a point for Carmen about WhatsApp, because that's a good way of organizing in the Latinx community.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys, that was good. We didn't go over.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So my computer said that my internet was unstable. I couldn't see. It was all freezing, like hazy.
You were awesome. The videos were great ads, I thought. I think it's fine. It's Netroots.